Hi, I'm Tom Kennemer. During the school year, ETV will broadcast interviews with local veterans who have served our country in combat around the world. Each veteran interviewed received an award of valor for their bravery during wartime, and for that courage and sacrifice have been inducted into the Madison County Military Heritage Hall of Heroes. Our interview today was taped in 2016 with U.S. Army veteran Phillip Fikes. Phillip served as an infantry officer in Vietnam and is the recipient of the Silver Star, our nation's third highest military award for valor on the battlefield. He's also the recipient of 2 Bronze Star medals with valor and the Army Commendation Medal with valor. For wounds he received while serving in Vietnam, Phillip received 3 Purple Heart medals and was medically discharged after being severely wounded in 1969. He was inducted into the Hall of Heroes in 2013, and at the time of his original interview, served on the board of directors for the Madison County Military Heritage Commission. Before we get into questions about your military service, tell us a little about yourself. Are you originally from this area?
Well, I'm from Alabama, but not from Madison County. I was born in Haleville over in Winston County, and grew up in Winfield, which is in Marion County. So all relatively close. But
I see, yeah.
Moved to Huntsville in 1978.
Okay.
I've been here ever since.
Tell us a little about your family. Your dad, did he serve in the military?
Dad served in the military. He was a radio operator for a cargo ship and was stationed in flew in Burma in World War II.
Okay, yeah.
He said his biggest remembrance of World War II was flying across the Atlantic.
Wow.
He had the Atlantic Ocean down between his legs. He was in that front part of the plane.
Yeah.
You can see the moonlight shine off the water because he flew across at night.
Yeah.
And he was just knew they were going to crash.
Yeah. Do you have any brothers that served in the military?
No, I have 2 brothers, but neither one of them served in the military. They're both younger than me.
And you grew up in Haleville, is that right? Went to high school there?
I was born in Haleville. I grew up and went to school in Winfield.
Okay.
Both elementary and middle, what you would call middle school and high school, and graduated from Columbia Military Academy in Columbia, Tennessee.
Were you involved with ROTC in high school, or is that started in college?
Yeah, Columbia Military Academy. I had 2 years of high school ROTC and then 2 years, a year and a half of college ROTC.
Now, after high school, you started at the University of Alabama, right?
Right.
Now, when did you decide, what led to your decision to join the military?
Well, I was very caught up with what was going on at that time in Vietnam and the way our people coming back were being treated.
Right.
But my father was a very demanding individual, expected a lot out of his boys. And my grades weren't quite up to what he thought they should be, so after a lengthy discussion with him, I decided to go into service and spend a couple of years in the Army.
I see. And how long had you been going to Alabama when you made this decision?
Well, I was actually in my second year, end of my second year.
Yeah. What were you studying, Phil?
I was pre-dental student at that time.
Okay, yeah.
And then after my injuries, I came back from Vietnam, I went through a series of tests for the Veterans Administration and was switched over to accounting, and that's what I got my degree in.
I see. Well, what was, so you went in the military, and what was officer training like for you, and where did that take place?
I was OCS at Fort Benning. So I went to Benning for basic, back to Fort McClellan for AIT, advanced infantry training, and then back to Benning for OCS. And that's where I got my commission, was at Fort Benning. Yeah. Really enjoyed, looking back at it, really enjoyed it. Yeah. At the time I was going through it, it wasn't a lot of fun. But,
it's like what, 6, 8 weeks, 10 weeks, something like that?
6 months.
6 months, oh yeah, okay, 6 months is a long time.
Started in August and graduated in March. Is that 6 months?
Yeah, that's close enough, right? Now, where did you serve before going to Vietnam? Did you serve here in the States or in Germany or somewhere?
I was in Hawaii at Schofield Barracks for a short period of time, and then I had some training down at the Panama Canal Zone right before I went to Vietnam.
You knew eventually you'd go to Vietnam probably, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And when they deactivated my unit in Vietnam, I knew I was gone. So.
Nice, yeah. What company or outfit were you attached to while in Vietnam?
3rd Battalion, 60th Infantry, 9th Infantry Division, Company D, 1st Platoon Leader.
Still remember all those numbers, don't you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I do too. Now tell us about your duties as, I know you were a platoon leader, first lieutenant. First, or you start, of course.
Graduated, started out as a second, was promoted to a first while I was in Vietnam.
Yeah, okay. And tell us about your missions as a platoon leader, and what you did when you went out in the field?
Well, when you say missions, my main primary goal was to take care of my men, make sure they got back home to their families, but see that they were fed and taken care of when we were not in the field. We were part of the I was part of the Mobile Riverine Force, which was a joint Navy-Army operation. So I actually lived on the ship when I was not out in the field. And we both used landing craft and helicopters to get out on operations. And I'd meet with the other officers, and when it was time to go on operations, and discuss what we were going to do and what we wanted to go about doing, and make sure I stayed in touch.
Was that in the southern part, near Saigon, or up north?
I was in the south, down the Delta.
I see.
Mekong Delta.
Yeah.
Well, I actually lived on the Mekong River.
Really?
In a Navy ship.
I see.
The base camp was what they call Dongtown, which was down in the Delta area.
Phil, talk about being away from home while you were in the military. How did it affect your family? And were you and Frances, your wife Frances, were you married at that time?
I was married and had a brand new little girl.
Really? Okay.
So I was sending not video but audio tapes home to my little girl, and they record. Instead of sending letters, they'd send back. I had a tape player in Vietnam, and they'd send me messages on tape so I could hear my little girl say her first words and things like that.
Right. Yeah. That was uplifting, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, definitely. And then towards the end, we were able to communicate by telephone. My wife still reminds me she wasn't very good at it because we went through a ham radio operator, and she had to say over when it was time for him to switch the mic back to me. She'd say, "I love you, honey," over or something like that. She'd forget to say over about 90% of the time.
How long would you get to talk to your wife or loved ones? Like 5 minutes or a half hour, or is it vary?
I had 10, 15 minutes about maybe, like I said, towards the end, once a week, once a month.
Sometimes that would break up too. You'd lose a signal or whatever.
Oh yeah, it was going from me to Hawaii, back to where she was in Louisiana or Alabama.
Yeah. Phil, I know you didn't have a whole lot of free time, but however little that was, what did you and your platoon do for relaxation? Did you get to watch any movies, do you have a PX nearby or anything?
Oh, we had, in Dongtown, the base camp, we had a PX, but you had to catch a landing craft off the ship over to the base camp at Dongtown. Of course, being an officer, I got to go over and enjoy the officers club, but the enlisted men did not. They never got off the ship except on operations. I was also the pay officer for the companies, so I would go into the base camp, pick up the payroll, and bring it back to the ship.
You're, I imagine, pretty popular as a pay officer, but your men didn't have any place to spend the money, really.
Most of it was sent home. I know mine was.
Yeah.
Put in an envelope and send it back home.
Yeah, that's what I did too. I'm sure you formed lasting friendships in the service. Do you still stay in contact with a lot of your friends?
No, because of the type of injuries I received to the head and all, and it was to the memory area of my brain is where I was hurt.
Right.
I have not talked to anyone from my outfit in Vietnam. My company commander, this is funny the way it worked out, last year came by the house to see me, and I was not home at the time, so I have his phone number, and I just cannot bring myself to make that call. Right. Well, I don't remember him. I don't know what I'm going to talk to him about. Right. He's going to remember all these things, and I'm not going to remember any of them.
And you just, like you don't know this person really. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure the name's familiar, but I will get around to calling him one of these days.
I see. Phil, I know you were in combat a lot during your time in Vietnam, and that's never any fun, but is there a time during your stay there that brings back good memories?
Good memories? No, not really. Like I said, maybe when the other officers and I could go into the base camp, to the officers club, and just enjoy some social time. I remember that as good times. And visiting with my men on the ship, we had a barge pulled up alongside the ship that's where our weapons stayed, and we could go over and have some soft drinks or something. They were always waiting on us when we came in off operation. And I could sit out and talk to them some. I enjoyed that. But that's about it for good times.
Right. Now, you mentioned that you were in the Delta of South Vietnam. Talk about the terrain. Explain to our students and those that are watching this interview, what was the terrain? What did it look like in Vietnam when you were there?
Rice paddies, dikes. We actually walked on the dikes like you see on the TV show, movie on TV. Walked down the dikes. Be wooded areas on each side of the rice paddy, and you never want to cross the middle of the rice paddy. Of course, sometimes we didn't have any choice but to do that. But you'd like to stay in the wooded areas. But it was palm trees, coconut trees. I remember drinking coconut milk because that's all the fresh water I had at that particular time. They would bring us fresh water, but we'd run out. It was, very hot. So we'd get coconuts out of the trees and drink coconut milk.
I see. Were you still there when they were using, the Agent Orange?
Yeah, and I'm in the Agent Orange program, yes. I was exposed to Agent Orange.
I see. And that was usually like along the Mekong Delta is like, what, half a mile or just several hundred feet back? Or how far did they spray back from the river?
I don't know exactly how far back, miles.
I see.
They'd spray an area, I don't know, 50 yards wide or something through the jungle to increase visibility, both for the enemy as well as for us. So.
Right.
But I mean, that's what it did.
Right.
But that's what they were doing.
Phil, as we mentioned earlier, you were awarded several medals for your courageous action on the battlefield, among them with the Silver Star. Talk about some of those battles that led to you receiving these Valor Awards.
Well, the first one that I remember where I got a Bronze Star was we were actually doing what I said we shouldn't do, and that's cross the rice paddy, and we came under fire. And I can remember just dropping down in the water in the rice paddy behind the dike. And some men trapped, and I had to move out and help them get to where they needed to be to get out of harm's way. We had a helicopter shot down. My platoon actually did the rescue operation for that helicopter. I think I told you one time before about we had a platoon pinned down, and I took my platoon in and rescued that platoon and called in artillery fire within 50 yards, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you got dirt and mud and everything else falling on you, you know the shells are hitting pretty close.
Right.
Plus, we didn't want to be between the artillery piece and the enemy because you often had short rounds that would fall short of the target and fall on friendly forces. So.
Now, you were wounded 3 times during combat. Talk with our students about what that experience was like and how it's affected you following your time in service.
Well, the first two weren't so bad. One of them was I got some shrapnel from an explosion close to a helicopter I was getting off of, and I got some shrapnel. The second one I got hit, this I call scratched, nicked by a bullet at the same operation where I got the Silver Star. I was actually crossing open area, open terrain, trying to get to my men. We came under fire from the enemy on 3 sides, and we were how to describe this? We operated on 4 helicopters. Each platoon was 4 helicopters. And my platoon that day was the lead platoon, and we were inserted into a rice paddy and came under fire on 3 sides. And the guys off my left, the helicopters to my left got wounded and pinned down, and so I crossed open terrain to get to those guys and then led an assault on enemy positions so I could take out some of the enemy positions so we could load the wounded on helicopters to get them out of the field.
And was it at this time that you suffered your most severe wound?
No, that was 2 days later. We were actually on that operation. We went on 3-day operations. On the 3rd day of that 3-day operation, we encountered some booby trap areas, and one of my men stepped on a booby trap. And the reason I say one of my men, it wasn't me, because usually the person that stepped on the booby trap lost a leg or got severely wounded. And I got shrapnel from that injury, and that was the worst time. I got injured in my head. I have a plate in my head, took out part of my knee. I'm missing part of my kneecap on the right side, missing part of my thumb, and I had 114 stitches when I got back to the States. But the worst part is I lost the use of my left arm, and mostly I have to walk with a prosthetic device on my left leg. That's the only way I got back to walking. I was completely paralyzed on the left side when I got back. And now I've just had to adjust to using one arm all the time with everything I do. It's just, luckily I was right-handed, so I didn't have to.
It was several men lost during this combat action, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
Yeah. Phil, share with us what or who prepared you to take the actions you did in combat?
Well, that'd be several people. I was in training, like I said, back then, and I'm sure it was with you too, when you first go into service. Now, you were a Marine, so I don't know, it may be different. But when you go into service, you go through basic, that's, what, 6 weeks, 9 weeks, something. Then you go through advanced infantry training, that's another 3 or 4 months. And you're in contact with drill sergeants and other officers that are And when you get to OCS, you have a TAC officer, so another lieutenant that's actually the platoon leader for your training platoon. And these people are training you what to do in a given situation, how to react, because most times you don't have but a second, maybe 2 seconds to think about what you got to do, what needs to be done. Right. So you do repetitious stuff over and over and over until it's pretty well drilled in. Kind of like practicing for a basketball game or a football game, I guess, for these kids if they play sports.
Prepare yourself for it.
Prepare yourself.
Exactly. Now, your dad was also a big influence on how you would react in combat or becoming a man.
Growing up, yeah.
Phil, how would you describe to young people what it's like to serve in a war zone? The thoughts you have of possibly being killed or wounded during a battle?
Well, I know a lot of people have been asked if I'd do it again. Other people have been asked the same question. A lot of veterans have been asked, and I would do it again in a heartbeat. A lot of guys were going over there, and the guys I served with were just terrific. They never hesitated about doing their job, and did what the country asked them to do.
No matter what kind of uproar was back home, or a protest or whatever, you had a job to do, and
you had a job to do, and you did it.
Right.
And like I said, the guys were so terrific that interaction, the men that supported each other were just fantastic. And I'd do it again. And but being in a battle zone is a little different. I know the first step you take off a helicopter when it lands in a rice paddy, you wonder if that first step's going to be on top of a landmine or a booby trap or something. And then as you're walking through the jungle, you're wondering about shots ringing out. I can remember the first time I got shot at. You definitely remember that bullet going past your ear as it breaks the sound barrier, it pops when it goes by your ear. And I can remember being shot at. So
a lasting memory. Always.
Lasting memory, that very first one. Yeah.
Phil, I know people often wonder, is it okay to be afraid or scared during combat? How would you answer that?
Yeah, I think it's okay to be afraid or scared. It's how you control that fear or being scared. Like I said, you know, all the guys were concerned when you get off a helicopter until you feel like you control your own environment. You don't know what's going to happen. As soon as you're inserted into the field, I actually had one guy in my command the whole time I was in Vietnam that could not handle his fear. He got off the helicopter, shot himself in the foot with an M16, and was evacuated out of Vietnam. But all the other guys, I was in command of 20 people. Actually, they were on charge with my company, so at times I was in command of 40, and nobody ever acted like that except that one person. So it's how you control your fear.
Right.
It's how you take charge of that.
I see. Yeah. You of course served in a war. Do you think war is depicted accurately in the TV shows and movies that you've seen?
We Were Soldiers was very accurate.
Yeah.
Some of these others shows that I've seen are not. I don't care to watch them. My wife gets tickled at me. She says, "How can you sit there and watch that?" And I said, "Well, I know the difference between what's real and what's not real." Now the movie, Mel Gibson, I think, was in it. We Were Soldiers. I thought it was a very actual depiction of the war in Vietnam.
Now, Phil, you were severely wounded, as we mentioned earlier, in that last battle, and you were evacuated. Now, were you conscious, or do you remember anything about being evacuated?
You're talking about when I got hit the big time, the last time? I was unconscious for 3 days. When I came to, they rushed me back to surgery to get more shrapnel out, and then after that, I was awake for the rest of the time. I was in Vietnam for 2 weeks, and I went to Japan for, I think, 2 or 3 weeks. Then I came back through to Fort Sam Houston, Texas, and that's where I was for recovery for 6 months. And then I went to the VA hospital in New Orleans.
I see.
So several hospitals.
So you were hospitalized after you were injured for what, almost a year?
Almost 7 months.
Oh, 7 months.
Yeah.
Following your recovery in the hospital and being medically discharged, what did you do? Yeah, I think you
went back to school.
Went back to school.
My wife and I loaded up all our belongings, which weren't a lot at that time.
Right.
And went back to school. We both finished school.
Had a child. Had a little girl.
Had a little girl.
Yeah.
Both went back to school and finished up our degrees.
And what was that degree in, Phil?
My degree was in accounting.
In accounting. Okay.
My wife's degree was in education first, and then interior decorating second.
And is Frances, she an Alabama girl?
She's a Louisiana girl. She's from Bogalusa, Louisiana.
So she pulls for LSU, and you pull
No. She pulls for Alabama.
Okay.
When we're
'Cause
playing
she went to
LSU,
Alabama.
she pulls for LSU when we're not playing.
I see. Great.
Kind of like you pulling for Auburn. Aren't you an Auburn fan?
Yeah, no, I like them both. You know, I used to, but I guess I'm more of an Alabama fan. What led to you and your family moving to the Huntsville area?
Job.
Yeah, I see. And
I
what
was
that?
working in, when I graduated from the university, I went to work in Tuscaloosa. I had a couple of jobs there.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about what was going on in Tuscaloosa at that time, not much. That's before
Mm-hmm.
Mercedes. And we decided for our children and for us, it was time to move somewhere else. And we looked at Huntsville, really liked what we saw.
Mm-hmm.
And job opportunity presented itself, and I came here to go to work. I actually lived here for 3 months before my family came to join me.
I see. Phil, talk with our students and of course our audience about how you and Francis dealt with your injuries. Was that difficult at first, and you're just
Very difficult. My wife said I had a chip on my shoulder because I felt like I guess somebody owed me something. But like I said earlier, it was recuperating also. I can't do things that require 2 hands. I have to do everything with 1 hand. So if it takes 2 hands, I have to she has to help me. She has to step in and be my left hand, my left arm. So it just took some adjusting.
Right. But
it's gotten better over time.
And the marriage endured.
Marriage endured. We've been married 49 years, so it's
fantastic. Fantastic. Now, tell us a little more about your family. I believe you and Francis have 2 daughters. Talk about your daughters and your grandchildren.
Well, I have my older daughter, Lisa, is an interior designer in Nashville, Tennessee, and she has 2 kids. One of them is a 14-year-old boy, and the other one's a 19-year-old girl that just started at the University of North Carolina. So throughout LSU and Auburn and all that, she's at the University of North Carolina. Yeah. I'm learning a new school. Yeah. And then my younger daughter lives in Orlando, Florida with her 2 kids, and they're 13 and 7. So.
Right. And you and Francis get to see them often as you can, I'm sure.
Well, when I completely retired from work, and when I got back from Vietnam, I couldn't just sit and do nothing, so I went to work as an accountant. And when I retired from accounting, when I retired from everything in December of 2013, we travel a lot now. We're gone, I don't know, 2 or 3 months out of the year. So.
There's an interesting story, Phil, about regarding you receiving the Silver Star. Explain that to us, how that came about.
When Colonel John Banks, who is now deceased, finally convinced me that I needed to fill out the application and apply for the Hall of Heroes in Madison County. I needed some background information and didn't have everything I needed, so I requested my personnel file. Well, the first one that came to me was a short version. Still didn't have everything. And so I requested a second one that was my complete file from the time I went in to the time I got out of the service. And in that last file, the big one, as I call it, was a Silver Star I didn't know I had.
You didn't know that you'd
So I went 45 years without knowing I had been awarded the Silver Star.
Right.
And General Dennis Viad at the Army Material Command presented me my Silver Star 46 years later.
Yeah, I think
46 years.
Yeah, I think
46 years later, in 2014.
And that was something, wasn't it?
That was something.
You were
still brings back a lot of emotions and forces me to think about a lot of things I hadn't thought about in a long time.
As we mentioned earlier, you're on the board of directors for the Madison County Military Heritage Commission. It's certainly good to have you on board.
Thank you.
Why did you get involved with that organization, and what has that meant to you, Phil?
Well, right after my induction, I was invited to join the board, and I seized the opportunity because I see the need to continue on the military history that's being done by the Military Heritage Commission and the awarding of veterans coming back from actions overseas. So I just wanted to be involved. And I stepped in. Like I said, I readily jumped on when Bob asked me to join, I readily.
Bob Marshall.
Bob Marshall. I just jumped on at the chance to be a part of what's being done by the Military Heritage Commission.
Well, we appreciate you being a part of it. We sure do. I want you to elaborate just a little more before we conclude the interview, Phil.
Elaborating is not my that's not my strong suit.
Not a good elaborator?
That's not my strong suit.
You know, you touched on a little earlier about would you do it all over again? Talk a little more about that. I mean, what that means to you. To if you had to, you said that you would do it over again. And go ahead.
Well, remember, I didn't have to the first time. Right. I felt like I wanted to.
Yeah.
And
you volunteered.
I volunteered.
Yeah.
So I would do it all over again to serve the country if the country asked me if the country decides, if our elected leaders decide that's what needs to happen, then yeah, I'm going to support our country. Mm-hmm. God, country, and family, that's what I go by.
Right. What would you like for young people, especially our students, to learn and hopefully remember from your military experience?
That serving in the military is not as bad as everybody thinks it is, but that serving in the military is something that everybody needs to stand up and do for our country, support our country, get involved, go vote, elect the leaders, and then step in and be part of the military and support our country. And I'm a little concerned about that, yes, like everybody else is, I guess.
Yeah. Phil, I want to tell you that it's been a pleasure talking to you today, sir.
Well, thank you. I'm not much of a talker, and I appreciate you.
You were telling me you want to get up and walk around. You did great here. Thank you, sir, for
hard work for you, I know. So thank you, Tom.
Well,
I appreciate it.
You know, Army guys talking to the Marines. You know, sometimes kind of rough. You know. Thank you for watching our interview. For more information on members of the Madison County Military Heritage Hall of Heroes, visit their website at mcmhc.org. For Huntsville Schools Educational Television, I'm Tom Kennemer.